Here's the continuation of the scenario in paragraph style. A new scene unfolded in the same hangar interior, where Iron Man, aka Tony Stark, stood amidst the peaceful atmosphere. Suddenly, Spider-Man swung into the room, looking frazzled. "I lost my phone, Mr. Tony," Spider-Man exclaimed. Tony Stark's expression turned annoyed. "What the hell, Peter? Why?" he asked, his tone incredulous. Spider-Man explained, "I thought I put my phone in my pocket when I was swinging, but I realized my pocket is empty." Tony Stark shook his head, his expression unimpressed. "Why haven't you checked things first?" The two superheroes exchanged polite arguments, with Spider-Man defending himself, saying, "How could I know I kept my phone in my pocket?" Tony Stark retorted, "Why can't you just be careful?" Spider-Man replied, "I am trying to be." Just as their conversation was escalating, the door to the room burst open, and Marvel's Wolverine, Logan, strode in, accompanied by Venom, Carnage, Agony, and Scream. The group looked confused, exchanging perplexed glances. Logan's gruff tone cut through the air, "What the hell is going on here, you all people?" The room fell silent, with all eyes on Logan, as the unlikely gathering struggled to make sense of the chaotic scene unfolding before them. Here is the continuation of the scenario with additional dialogues. Logan, what's with all the superheroes in one place? Tony Stark, just a coincidence, Logan. Spider-Man here lost his phone. Spider-Man, yeah, I was swinging around and I think I dropped it. Venom, great. Because we didn't have enough problems already. Carnage, yeah, let's just add a lost phone to the list. Agony, can we just focus on finding the phone? Scream, yeah, before things get any worse. Tony Stark, all right. Let's work together to find Spider-Man's phone. Spider-Man, thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. Logan, just don't expect me to start swinging from skyscrapers anytime soon. Venom, don't worry, Logan. We'll stick to the ground. Here's the scenario explained in paragraph style. A new scene unfolded in the same hangar interior, where Iron Man, aka Tony Stark, stood amidst the peaceful atmosphere. Suddenly, Spider-Man swung into the room, looking frazzled. "I lost my phone, Mr. Tony," Spider-Man exclaimed. Tony Stark's expression turned annoyed, and he asked Spider-Man why he hadn't checked his pockets before realizing his phone was missing. The two superheroes exchanged polite arguments, with Spider-Man defending himself, saying he thought he had put his phone in his pocket when he was swinging. Tony Stark retorted that Spider-Man should have been more careful. Just as their conversation was escalating, the door to the room burst open, and Marvel's Wolverine, Logan, strode in, accompanied by Venom, Carnage, Agony, and Scream. The group looked confused, exchanging perplexed glances. Logan's gruff tone cut through the air, "What the hell is going on here, you all people?" The room fell silent, with all eyes on Logan, as the unlikely gathering struggled to make sense of the chaotic scene unfolding before them. Tony Stark explained the situation, and the group began to discuss how to find Spider-Man's lost phone. Here's the scenario explained in paragraph style, along with the additional extra dialogues. A new scene unfolded in the same hangar interior, where Iron Man, aka Tony Stark, stood amidst the peaceful atmosphere. Suddenly, Spider-Man swung into the room, looking frazzled. "I lost my phone, Mr. Tony," Spider-Man exclaimed. Tony Stark's expression turned annoyed, and he asked Spider-Man why he hadn't checked his pockets before realizing his phone was missing. "What the hell, Peter? Why?" Tony Stark asked, his tone incredulous. Spider-Man explained, "I thought I put my phone in my pocket when I was swinging, but I realized my pocket is empty." Tony Stark shook his head, his expression unimpressed. "Why haven't you checked things first?" The two superheroes exchanged polite arguments, with Spider-Man defending himself, saying, "How could I know I kept my phone in my pocket?" Tony Stark retorted, "Why can't you just be careful?" Spider-Man replied, "I am trying to be." Tony Stark sighed, "Well, try harder next time." Just as their conversation was escalating, the door to the room burst open, and Marvel's Wolverine, Logan, strode in, accompanied by Venom, Carnage, Agony, and Scream. The group looked confused, exchanging perplexed glances. Logan's gruff tone cut through the air, "What the hell is going on here, you all people?" Venom chimed in, Great. Because we didn't have enough problems already." Carnage added, "Yeah, let's just add a lost phone to the list." Agony suggested, "Can we just focus on finding the phone?" Scream agreed, "Yeah, before things get any worse." Tony Stark explained the situation, and the group began to discuss how to find Spider-Man's lost phone. All right. Let's work together to find Spider-Man's phone," Tony Stark said. Spider-Man added, "Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it." Logan grumbled, "Just don't expect me to start swinging from skyscrapers anytime soon." Venom chuckled, "Don't worry, Logan. We'll stick to the ground." Spider-Man asked, "Does anyone have any ideas where I might have dropped my phone?" Carnage suggested, "Maybe you dropped it while you were swinging around." Agony added, "Or maybe it fell out of your pocket when you landed." Scream chimed in, "We should check the area where you were swinging." The group began to brainstorm and discuss ways to find Spider-Man's lost phone, working together despite their differences. Here's the continuation of the scenario. Tony Stark chuckled and said, "Logan, you look like Peter lost his phone." Logan's expression turned incredulous, and he exclaimed, "What the hell? Peter lost his phone." Logan reacted by casually sighing, putting his fingers on his forehead, and shaking his head. He closed his eyes, clearly annoyed, and muttered, "Oh geez, man, Peter is such a dumbo." The symbiote offspring of Venom, Scream and Agony, stood nearby, observing the exchange. They couldn't help but react to Logan's frustration. Scream let out a casual sigh and crossed her arms closed across her chest, her expression annoyed. Agony followed suit, sighing and crossing her arms, clearly unimpressed with Spider-Man's carelessness. Venom, however, simply shook his head, a hint of amusement on his face. "Kids these days," he said, chuckling. Carnage, on the other hand, seemed to find the situation hilarious, letting out a loud, maniacal laugh. Spider-Man looked sheepish, realizing he was the center of attention. Hey, it's not my fault. He protested. I was just swinging around, and it must have fallen out of my pocket. Tony Stark patted Spider-Man on the back, saying, "Don't worry, kid. We'll find your phone." Here's the continuation of the scenario. Tony Stark shook his head, chuckling, "Oh man, how many times does Peter just lose things?" He turned to Spider-Man, teasingly saying, "I swear, Peter, you'd lose your head if it wasn't attached." Spider-Man looked embarrassed, sheepishly grinning, "Hey, it's not that often." Logan raised an eyebrow, skeptically saying, "Really, Peter? I've seen you lose your web shooters, your mask, and now your phone." Venom chimed in, "Yeah, and let's not forget the time he lost the Stark Industries prototype in the city." Carnage snickered, "Yeah, that was classic." Scream and Agony rolled their eyes, exchanging an exasperated glance. Tony Stark playfully ruffled Spider-Man's hair, saying, "Don't worry, kid. We'll find your phone. And maybe next time, we'll attach it to you with a leash." Spider-Man laughed, shaking his head, "Yeah, very funny, Tony." Here's the continuation of the scenario. Agony crossed her arms, folding them closed across her chest, and said, "Unbelievable. A superhero who can't even keep track of his own phone." She shook her head, her expression disapproving. Scream stood beside Agony, also crossing her arms, and chimed in, "I know, right? It's like, how hard is it to keep track of one little phone?" She let out a frustrated sigh, her eyes rolling in exasperation. Agony added, "And this is the guy who's supposed to be saving the world." She raised an eyebrow, skeptical. Scream nodded in agreement, "Yeah, it's a wonder he doesn't lose his spider suit." The two symbiote offspring exchanged a knowing glance, their expressions mirroring each other's annoyance. Here's the continuation of the scenario. Iron Man nodded, "All right, I'll go search for your phone, Peter. Try to stay out of trouble, okay?" With that, he flew off into the air, leaving Peter Parker standing awkwardly inside the hangar. Logan turned to Peter, a stern expression on his face. "You know, Peter, you'd think you'd be more responsible with your gear." Venom chimed in, "Yeah, especially since you're a superhero and all." Peter looked sheepish, I know. It was just an accident." Agony and Scream exchanged an exasperated glance, their arms still crossed over their chests. Carnage, however, just chuckled, "Hey, don't be too hard on him, guys. We've all lost something important at some point." Venom shot Carnage a warning glance, "Not the time, Carnage." As the group continued to tease Peter about his carelessness, Iron Man flew overhead, his suit spotlight scanning the ground below for any sign of Peter's phone. Here's the continuation of the scenario. Iron Man nodded, "All right, I'll go search for your phone, Peter. Try to stay out of trouble, okay?" With that, he flew off into the air, leaving Peter Parker standing awkwardly inside the hangar. Logan turned to Peter, a stern expression on his face. "You know, Peter, you'd think you'd be more responsible with your gear." Venom chimed in, "Yeah, especially since you're a superhero and all." Peter looked sheepish, I know. It was just an accident." Agony and Scream exchanged an exasperated glance, their arms still crossed over their chests. Agony shook her head, "Unbelievable. You're a superhero, and you can't even keep track of your own phone." Scream added, "I mean, what's next? Are you going to lose your spider suit too?" Carnage, however, just chuckled, "Hey, don't be too hard on him, guys. We've all lost something important at some point." Venom shot Carnage a warning glance, "Not the time, Carnage." Scream continued, "I swear, Peter, you're more careless than a human. And that's saying something." Agony nodded in agreement, "Yeah, at least humans have an excuse for being clumsy. You're a superhero, Peter. You're supposed to be better than that." As the group continued to tease Peter about his carelessness, Iron Man flew overhead, his suit spotlight scanning the ground below for any sign of Peter's phone. Here's the continuation of the scenario. Iron Man soared through the night sky, his AI-powered helmet, Jarvis, scanning the city below for any sign of Peter's phone. "Jarvis, initiate phone tracking protocol," Iron Man instructed. Jarvis's voice responded, "Affirmative, sir. Scanning for phone signal." A few moments passed before Jarvis announced, "Phone signal detected. Location locked." Iron Man's helmet display flickered to life, showing a map of the city with a red dot indicating the phone's location. "Jarvis, zoom in on the location," Iron Man ordered. The display zoomed in, revealing a rooftop several blocks away. Iron Man flew towards the location, his suit's propulsion system propelling him through the air. As he landed on the rooftop, Iron Man spotted Peter's phone lying on the ground, partially hidden by a ventilation shaft. "Jarvis, phone found," Iron Man reported, relieved. Jarvis responded, "Affirmative, sir. Phone signal strength indicates it's still functional." Iron Man picked up the phone, tucking it into his suit's storage compartment. "Time to return this to its careless owner," Iron Man said with a chuckle, flying back towards the hangar. Here's the continuation of the scenario. Iron Man flew back into the hangar, Peter's phone in hand. As he landed, he approached the group, who were all seated and looking relieved. "Ah, perfect timing," Iron Man said, holding out the phone. But before returning the phone to Peter, Tony Stark activated a tiny device that began to upgrade the phone's technology. The phone's screen flickered to life, displaying a futuristic interface with glowing neon lights. Peter's eyes widened in amazement as Tony handed him the upgraded phone. "Thanks, Mr. Stark," Peter exclaimed. Logan chuckled, "So, you got your phone back, Pete. You know, maybe this time you'll actually take care of it." Venom added, "Don't lose your phone again, Spider-Man." Carnage grinned mischievously, "No more losing phones again, got it?" Scream, still with her arms crossed, said, "Don't be a dum-dum again, Peter." Agony nodded in agreement, "Yeah, Peter, no more carelessness." Tony Stark intervened, "Enough, all of you. I think Peter gets the lesson." Peter smiled, relieved, "I'm glad to have my phone back, thanks Mr. Tony." He then connected the adapter wire to his phone and put it in recharging mode. As the phone began to charge, Peter couldn't help but admire the sleek new design. This is awesome, Mr. Stark. Thanks for the upgrade. Tony smiled, satisfied. Anytime, Peter. Just try not to lose it again. Here's the continuation of the scenario. Peter started to open his phone and search for an upgrade setting. Mr. Tony, I don't see an upgrade setting on my phone, Peter said, confused. Tony Stark replied, it must be in settings, Peter. Peter responded, I've looked everywhere, I still can't seem to find it. Tony Stark casually sighed, putting his fingers on his head, shaking it, and closing his eyes. Oh great. Now let me see, he said, walking towards Peter and taking the phone from him. Tony started searching for the upgrade setting and eventually found it. He pressed the upgrade button on the phone screen, and the phone started to upgrade itself. Tony handed the phone back to Peter, saying, here, it's done. Just get some knowledge on how phones work, Peter. Peter looked sheepish, thanks, Mr. Tony. I guess I still have a lot to learn. Logan chimed in, yeah, like how to use a phone without losing it. Venom added, or how to upgrade it without needing Tony's help. Carnage chuckled, hey, Peter, maybe you should just stick to swinging from webs. Scream said, yeah, leave the tech stuff to Tony. Agony shook her head, Peter. When will you learn? Tony Stark intervened, hey, that's enough. Peter's learning, and that's what matters. Peter smiled, grateful, thanks, Mr. Tony. I'll try to do better next time. Tony Stark patted Peter on the back, saying, that's all anyone can ask for, Peter. Here's the continuation of the scenario. Venom chimed in, you know, Peter, for a superhero, you're pretty fragile. Scream added, yeah, I mean, can't even take care of a phone. Venom continued, I mean, I've seen you web slinging around the city, and I'm just thinking, how does he not get lost? Scream chuckled, right. It's like, he's got the whole superhero thing down, but the whole being responsible thing, not so much. Venom said, I swear, Peter, you're like a kid who can't even take care of a goldfish. Scream chimed in, yeah, hey, look, I've got a phone. Oh wait, now it's gone. Both Venom and Scream burst out laughing. Tony Stark rolled his eyes, all right, that's enough. Peter's got the message. Here's the continuation of the scenario. Peter looked at his phone, still undergoing the upgrade process. Tony Stark said, now, the phone is upgrading, but wait, what's that? Tony approached the phone and suddenly picked up another phone that was lying nearby. It's Scream's phone, Tony said, examining it. Scream looked surprised, oh, how did you? Tony just smiled and said, I've got my ways. Tony then used the device in Scream's phone to upgrade it, just like he did with Peter's phone. Scream watched in amazement as her phone was transformed into a high-tech device. Once the upgrade was complete, Tony placed Scream's phone beside Peter's phone. Looks like Scream's phone needed an upgrade too, Tony said with a smile. Scream looked at her new phone, thrilled. Thanks, Tony. I didn't know my phone needed an upgrade. Tony chuckled, well, it looks like Scream is also like Peter, in need of a little tech upgrade. Peter laughed, hey, watch it, Tony. Scream playfully rolled her eyes, yeah, thanks for the comparison, Tony. Here's the continuation of the scenario. Peter looked at his phone, still undergoing the upgrade process. Tony Stark said, now, the phone is upgrading, but wait, what's that? Tony approached the phone and suddenly picked up another phone that was lying nearby. It's Scream's phone, Tony said, examining it. Scream looked surprised, oh, how did you? Tony just smiled and said, I've got my ways. Tony then used the device in Scream's phone to upgrade it, just like he did with Peter's phone. Scream watched in amazement as her phone was transformed into a high-tech device. Venom chimed in, looks like Scream's phone was due for an upgrade. Carnage added, yeah, and now it's all fancy and stuff. Agony nodded, about time, too. Scream's phone was ancient. Logan, who had been quietly observing, spoke up, well, at least now Scream's phone won't be a liability. Once the upgrade was complete, Tony placed Scream's phone beside Peter's phone. Looks like Scream's phone needed an upgrade too, Tony said with a smile. Scream looked at her new phone, thrilled. Thanks, Tony. I didn't know my phone needed an upgrade. Tony chuckled, well, it looks like Scream is also like Peter, in need of a little tech upgrade. Peter laughed, hey, watch it, Tony. Scream playfully rolled her eyes, yeah, thanks for the comparison, Tony. Venom chuckled, hey, at least you two are in good company. Carnage grinned, yeah, I need a tech upgrade, club. Agony shook her head, you two are something else. Logan just shook his head, I'm out of here. This is too much for me. Here's the continuation of the scenario. Logan walked into his room, closing the door behind him. He let out a deep sigh, relieved to be away from the conversation. He walked over to the high-tech aquarium and began to feed the inhabitants, including the goldfish, axolotl couples, and even some food for the pebbles. Nearby, in a separate enclosure, the two alligator romantic couples, Sony and Chompers, along with their offspring, lay in the dark room with the heater on. Logan approached them, dropping a raw piece of meat into their enclosure. Sony, the male alligator, looked up at Logan and said, what's the matter, Logan? You look annoyed. Logan's expression was grim, I was dealing with a lot of freaks out there. I'm just annoyed. Chompers, the female alligator, chimed in, freaks. Who are you talking about? Logan shook his head, just the usual suspects. Tony Stark and his tech obsession, Peter Parker's carelessness, Venom and his symbiote offspring, it's just too much sometimes. Sony and Chompers exchanged a knowing glance, and Sony said, well, at least you have us to come back to. We may not be the most conventional family, but we're here for you. Logan smiled slightly, feeling a sense of gratitude towards the alligators. Thanks, guys. Just being around you all makes me feel better. Here's the continuation of the scenario. Tony Stark walked out of the hangar, followed by Peter, Venom, Carnage, Agony, and Scream. As they stepped into the bright sunlight, Tony turned to Scream and said, "You know, Scream, I never thought I'd say this, but you're starting to remind me of Peter." Scream raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Tony chuckled. "Well, first, you lose your phone, and then you need me to upgrade it for you. Sound familiar?" Peter laughed. "Hey, that's not fair, Tony." Venom chimed in. "Yeah, Tony, don't be too hard on Scream. She's just trying to keep up with the times." Carnage added, "Besides, Tony, you're one to talk. You're always tinkering with new gadgets." Agony shook her head. "You're all missing the point. Scream, you need to be more careful with your belongings." Scream nodded. "I know, Agony. It won't happen again." Tony smiled. "See, Scream. You're already learning from your mistakes. That's the spirit." Peter grinned. "Yeah, and who knows, maybe one day you'll be as tech-savvy as Tony." Scream playfully rolled her eyes. "I doubt it, Peter. But I'll try my best." Here's the continuation of the scenario. As the night sky darkened, the moon rose high in the sky, casting a silver glow over the landscape. Tony Stark, Peter, Venom, Carnage, Agony, and Scream walked back into the hangar, eager to unwind after a long day. As they entered the hangar, they were greeted by the familiar sight of the aquarium, where the romantic alligator couple, Sony and Chompers, lay with their offspring nearby. Sony, the male alligator, looked up at the group and asked, "What commotion were you all engaged in? You guys looked like you were in the middle of something intense." Chompers, the female alligator, added, "Yes, we could sense the excitement from all the way over here." Tony Stark chuckled. "Just the usual, Sony. Peter lost his phone, and I had to upgrade it for him." Venom chimed in, and then Tony upgraded Scream's phone too, because she was having some technical difficulties. Scream playfully rolled her eyes. "Hey, it wasn't my fault. Tony just likes to tinker with things." Carnage grinned. "Yeah, and now Scream's phone is all fancy and high-tech, just like Peter's." Agony shook her head. "You're all so dramatic. Can't you just have a normal conversation for once?" Sony and Chompers exchanged a knowing glance, and Sony said, "We're just glad you're all safe and sound. That's all that matters." The group nodded in agreement, and Tony Stark added, "Yes, let's just focus on enjoying the evening, shall we?" Here's the continuation of the scenario. Tony Stark, Peter, Venom, Carnage, Agony, and Scream walked into a room filled with various high-tech gadgets and machinery. In the center of the room, Sun Wukong, the Monkey King, sat on a chair, snacking on heavenly peaches. Sun Wukong looked up at the group with a casual grin. "Hey, what's up, guys? I hear Peter lost his phone again." He chuckled. "That kid's got a knack for losing things." Peter looked sheepish. "Hey, it was just an accident." Sun Wukong teased. "An accident? You mean like how you, accidentally, lose your web shooters every other week?" Tony Stark chuckled. "Well, Sun Wukong, we're actually here to upgrade your magical AI staff." Sun Wukong's eyes lit up. "Oh, sweet. I've been waiting for that upgrade." Venom chimed in. "Yeah, we're gonna make it even more powerful than before." Carnage added, "And maybe add some new features, like a built-in phone finder for Peter." Agony rolled her eyes. "You're not helping, Carnage." Scream chuckled. "Hey, at least it's not as bad as the time Peter lost his spider suit." Sun Wukong laughed. Hey, let's not bring that up again. Peter's got enough to worry about." Tony Stark nodded. All right, let's focus on the upgrade." The group began working on the magical AI staff, upgrading its systems and adding new features. Sun Wukong watched with interest, snacking on his heavenly peaches and offering occasional suggestions. Here's the continuation of the scenario. As they finished upgrading the magical AI staff, they carefully placed it in its anchorage part beside Sun Wukong. With the staff secure, the group began to feel a sense of exhaustion wash over them. "Time for a nap, I think," Tony Stark said, yawning. Sun Wukong nodded in agreement. "Indeed. All this tech work has worn me out." The group made their way to a separate room, which appeared to be a cozy bedroom. As they entered, they closed the door behind them, enveloping themselves in a peaceful silence. Without a word, they all began to make their way to the bed, climbing underneath the blanket. Peter snuggled into the pillow. "Ah, this feels amazing." Venom and Carnage settled in on either side of him, their symbiote bodies relaxing into the mattress. Agony and Scream curled up at the foot of the bed, their eyes already drifting shut. Sun Wukong claimed the spot next to Tony Stark, who was already fast asleep. The Monkey King smiled, feeling grateful for the camaraderie. "It's not often I get to relax with friends," he whispered, before drifting off to sleep. As the group slumbered, the room grew quiet, filled only with the sound of gentle breathing. The magical AI staff, now secure in its anchorage, stood watch, ready to defend its master and his friends whenever needed. Here's the continuation of the scenario. The camera pans over the sleeping figures, the only sound the gentle hum of the magical AI staff. Suddenly, Peter's eyes flicker open, and he silently sits up in bed. Without making a sound, Peter swings his legs over the side of the bed and plants his feet firmly on the ground. He stands up, stretching slightly, and begins to make his way out of the room. The others remain fast asleep, unaware of Peter's departure. Peter slips out of the room and makes his way to the main hangar interior. Once inside, Peter's eyes scan the room until they land on Scream's phone. He picks it up and plugs it into a charging station. Next, he pulls out his own phone and begins to upgrade both devices simultaneously. The camera zooms in on the phones as the upgrade progress bars fill up. Finally, the upgrades are complete, and Peter places both phones on a nearby table. With his task finished, Peter turns to leave, closing the hangar door behind him. He makes his way back to the bedroom, slipping back into bed beside his companions. As he settles back under the blanket, Peter's hand reaches over to a nearby table, where a small robot sits. It's Bumblebee, the Autobot from the Transformers. Peter's fingers dance across Bumblebee's surface, putting the robot into upgrade mode. As the upgrade begins, Peter snuggles back under the blanket, a small smile on his face. The camera pans out, showing the entire group sleeping peacefully, unaware of Peter's late-night activities. The scene fades to black as the sound of Bumblebee's upgrade hums softly in the background. Here's the final part of the scenario. As the upgrade of Bumblebee continues in the background, Peter quietly gets out of bed again, this time to retrieve the adapter, his phone, and Scream's phone from the table in the main hangar. He carefully picks up the 3 items and begins to make his way back to the bedroom. Once inside, he walks over to the table behind the bed and opens the drawer. Peter gently places the adapter, his phone, and Scream's phone inside the drawer, making sure they are secure and out of the way. With his task complete, Peter closes the drawer and begins to get back into bed. He snuggles under the blanket, feeling content and relaxed. The sound of Bumblebee's upgrade hums softly in the background as Peter drifts off to sleep, surrounded by his friends and companions. The camera pans out, showing the peaceful scene, before fading to black. The final shot is of the closed drawer, with the adapter, Peter's phone, and Scream's phone safely inside, as the words, "The end," appear on the screen.